Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War battle report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we have Undead versus Dwarves. This battle was fought at 2250 points and the scenario was kill. So in keeping with the 2019 Army Palooza, unfortunately I do not have any army lists to show up as Easy Army hasn't been updated yet, and I don't feel like messing around with Battlescribe in terms of writing a file for it. Yeah, and then the models are, a little out there, but if you're on this channel, you're used to proxies. So let's move forward. So first we see the tabletop, and off here to the right, yeah, there's definitely about 1.5 feet more table, but since we're running such small armies, we're just not using it. So, I mean, we could go over there, we just won't. And to go over the terrain, off here on the right, we have our sole piece of impassable terrain. It's a rock that's height 4, and you might notice that this is definitely the 2D War Machine style terrain, and it's good and bad because it's good as the late night Friday gaming group we've been putting together is actually getting big enough that we need more terrain. So that's good, but it's bad because boy howdy do I hate 2D terrain. I don't hate it for playtesting or anything like that, but I hate it for taking pictures. So anyway, moving forward, we've got this height 4 impassable rock and no other impassable terrain on the field. Then we've got 3, 1 in the center here, 1 slightly off to the right here, and then 1 off to the left. These are height 6 forests. So yeah, those are height 6 forests. Then we've got 1 and 2 height 2 hills, so pretty helpful. We have 1 height flat field off here to the left, and then 1 height 1 barrier under the undead battle line, and that's it for the terrain. So kill is a pretty simple scenario, and it's back for 2019. The way it works is that you need to kill at least 10% more than your opponent did. So in this case, since we're playing a 2250 point battle, we need to each kill at least 225 points more than our opponent did to claim victory. Otherwise, it's pretty simple, as you would expect from a scenario called kill. Moving forward with the armies, this is obviously after Vanguard, or the dwarves have egregiously cheated. We have 1, 2, 3 regiments of Hernius' Rangers, which means that he's running the Hernius formation. And in the middle, right there, is Hernius. They have no items, but they are there. This dreadnought-looking fellow is an Earth Elemental, and next to him is Bannock Coalarm. So that's the idea. Actually, I think this is Kragoth. Yeah, it's Kragoth this game. And yeah, my opponent has a few proxies here, but he's actually just moved back up to the area. We've been friends for a long time. And in fact, this dwarf army has been sitting in my garage or my closet for like 8-ish years. It's been there for a while. And I painted all these models a while ago, and unfortunately the Warhammer Dwarves never had any big monsters or anything like that, and so it's a little lacking in that department, as you might see with these random 40k models that'll be in here. But cut them some slack, we will figure it out eventually. Over here, little slide up, we have a stone priest. So this is just a stone priest. I think he bought Banechant and the Inspiring Talisman on him. This horde of Terminators right here, that is a horde of Earth Elementals with no upgrade. And then we have the start of a horde of Bulwarkers who finish right on over here. So a horde of Bulwarkers. They might have the Brew of Strength, but I'm not entirely sure. It'd be a great upgrade for them, so maybe. Then we have the big boy himself. What is this? Gollix Fury. So Gollix Fury is this big Magma Droth model, great looking model, and I had actually bought it. I bought it recently, or I bought it not recently, but a while ago, because I thought I might use it for something in Salamanders or something like that, and I got a great deal on it, and my opponent likes the model so much that he's decided that he'll put it in his dwarf army, so I'm all about that. It seems cool. And next to him, this horde of Slayer models are, I think they're called Iron Guard. They're the Def 6 Dwarf Infantry. They're Def 6 melee 3+ and have 12 attacks. And you can downgrade them to Def 5 with Crush 1 if you want, although my opponent did not. Unfortunately, my opponent and I both agree on Slayer models, hence why he owns them and I've painted them. I love Slayers. I've always loved the concept of them, and unfortunately just Berserker troops and regiments aren't very good, and it's generally an internal balance issue. They're okay, but then Brock Riders exist, and if you want to give your opponent like a competent game, you can't really run Berserkers and expect more of it. I'm sure people disagree with me, but the math's just not there, guys. Moving here to the undead side, some of these units might be a little brittle, a little weird, but my lovely girlfriend was at least good enough to let me drive home from a Christmas party across. For those of you not in the know, the traffic in Seattle is very bad. And I don't mean like we have a ton of people like LA. I mean the city is laid out poorly. There's a big lake between where most of the people live, the suburbs, and the city itself. It's very expensive, and we have no transportation, no public transit. So it takes about an hour to an hour and a half with off-peak hours to get across the lake, which is, generally, if you were to do it at a normal speed, it'd be about 20 minutes. So she was able to do that, and because it took us so long, I just had to grab whatever models I could to make this, although they are relatively representative of what they are. So in the front here, we have 3 troops of, what are they, Revenant Cav. They are a great unit in Undead, and one that I haven't used too often before, back when I was playing Undead, because I quickly swapped to the Empire of Dust when they allowed us to do that back in playtest. Behind him, this Terrorgeist looking motherfucker, that is Apophis for tonight. So Apophis got some really good upgrades in 2019, and I really wanted to try him out, as I've tried him in 2018 and I found him pretty lackluster. But in 2019, they got rid of the huge flyer rule, so he can just buy fly, right? So instead of gaining no speed upgrade and not gaining nimble, he is now speed 10 and nimble for 50 points, which is a steal. He gained +2 attacks, or I guess it gained +2 attacks. I'm not sure whether Apophis is a male or a female, but they gained +2 attacks, so went from 10 to 12, which is really good. And then the big thing is that the nerve of Apophis went from an 1820 to a -21, which means he's no longer competing, or it's no longer competing with the Revenant Kings, the Revenant King on Worm, for just sustainability. So really like this unit, and I wanted to try it out. Over here we see the beginning of the battle line. So we have 1 and 2 hordes of skeleton warriors. The skeleton warriors are a really good unit, obviously, but they're not, because I play Empire of Dust and I really like them there, but in Undead they tend to be frowned upon just because zombies do what they do for cheaper, which is pretty normal. If you've played any of the other fantasy games, including obviously Warhammer, a lot of times when you were playing Undead, skeletons just fell by the wayside because zombies are what they are, but better. So thankfully, Mantic released a new formation called Army of Darkness, and I really like it. You have to bring 2 hordes of skeleton warriors. They gain Iron Resolve, and then you also have to bring a Necromancer, and the Necromancer gains Iron Resolve, Inspiring, just blanket Inspiring, and +5 to cast on skeleton units, which aren't just the units in his formation, which are skeleton warriors. He could also cast on skeleton spearmen, on skeleton archers, on any of the, I think there are 3 skeleton units on any of them in the army. So it's a really powerful upgrade, especially for how versatile caster on necromancers really are. So yeah, really good. I'm eager to try it out. Behind them, we see my Revenant King on Worm. The Revenant King on Worm is running another 2019, or another thing new to 2019, which is Critter's Call. It's a 20-point legendary spell. It's range 24, and it's 8 dice. After you roll the hit and you roll the wound. So if you wound a unit with it, they are disrupted, which is really good. So it turns off Fly, it turns off Thunderous, it turns off range attacks, which is the big one. And then if it hits, it stops casting, or you lose the spell. Not if it wounds, which is a little unfortunate because of that. but still, I think it's a great spell and a solid include in undead armies, because they have so many casters, so many things that just come with spells, so they can buy legendary spells, and their shooting is, I actually don't think it's all that bad. It's just that internal balance issue where their shooting isn't bad, but their combat is so competent, and they've got so much value out of things like zombies and skeletons that why would you spend your points there, right? You've got better things. Anyway, lastly, he has the magic item, the Banner of the Griffin, to buff these units up. Over here, we see in the front this random elf model I have that is Alona, which is, she is the vampire special character in a Portent of Things to Come. And next to her, these two regiments right here of just undead and old witch elves. Actually, these are not, these guys right here, they are not undead models. These are a mixture of graveguard pieces and greatsword pieces, because back in the day I was building a Sylvanian army for my empire. So not all of them are undead, although I did sell them and they came back to me with a lot more undead parts on them because that person just wanted to play them as graveguard. So anyway, I've got these two regiments. They are both vampire. They are both soul drinker regiments, and I'm running Alona's Thirsty Coven. So all of these are my Thirsty Borches. Really cool formation. I played it in 2018 and enjoyed it when it was 1 regiment and 2 troops of soul drinker infantry, but it was a little lackluster. I got to play against people and it was fun to just go like, smash face, right? But the new one is more expensive and way better, as you get to bring Alona, which is a character I otherwise would never run. She did retain her defense 6 during the great defense purge of undead, but still she's a little expensive for what she brings. But in this formation, she becomes fearless, as do the soul drinkers, and they all gain +1 speed. So Alona becomes a speed 9 individual with 8 attacks at crush 3, which is and a 3+ melee. So she is a real beat stick. And then both of these units here are speed 7 and dash 17 for their nerve. So I'm really impressed. I'm eager to try it out. And the one made up of witch elves get the brew of sharpness, so they're hitting on 2s, so pretty nasty. And we move on to turn 1. So turn 1, the dwarves get the roll off, and over here on the left, I was sort of talking to my opponent, and I'm like, do you want to move into my charge range? Because all these guys are cav, right? And he was like, yep, that's the plan of the list. And he wins the roll off, and it turns out to be a pretty okay plan. Kragoth here moves forward, and behind him Kolarm, just sort of hanging out. Originally my opponent had put Bannock right here, and I reminded him that it was pretty easy for me to get a charge due to the high amount of surge I have, and then I also have this Revenant King down here that could just charge into him and then overrun into his Kragoth's flank. So we readjusted it to be behind him. So that's the idea. And over here, the Stone Priest is just within 12 of Kragoth. I think he might have gone for he was thinking about doing a surge, and I was like, that's probably not the best. And he agreed. It's not like I'm telling him what to do in this game. He definitely said, yeah, I moved him here to get off a surge, but that's a bad idea, and I agreed with him. And then yeah, so over here on this side of the field, so more central than right, but I guess it's the right of our line, these guys just advance forward. They're still hidden behind this hill mostly. Obviously Gallic's Fury is not, but the rest of them are. And I think he's just doing what dwarfs do, which is keep your battle line, move forward a little bit, don't get charged by a bunch of vampires. So yeah, solid movement for turn 1. Then we see his shooting. So he puts almost all of his shots from Hernius's Rangers and Hernius into this one troop of Revenant Cav. Ends up doing 10 wounds to him, which is pretty good, as they're only a dash 14 nerf. And I think, he does 3 wounds to these Revenant Cav with just some extra shots, because 10 wounds should be fine. And after all is said and done, the 3 wound guys, they suffer nothing, but the other guys are killed, so they're gone. First blood goes to dwarves, and in kill, that's a big deal. We move on to Undead turn 1. So mostly on the right and center here, we just move forward, keeping kind of a battle line. The vampires advance forward a little bit more. These pink dice represent the dwarves' maximum charge range, so the vampires are just out of it, and since they're speed 7, they want to be a little closer. These vampires are meant to be even closer, but it's getting kind of late at night and we're getting a little sloppy. So they're meant to be a little closer up here since they have the movement, so they can be on the hill and see over it. So that's the idea. And over here, I've got my Necromancer ready to cast Surge onto these Skeleton Warriors, and the idea is that I need them to get right here to block up Kragath. I don't want him charging into any of the stuff going on over on my left flank. So, yep, that's their plan there. And speaking of the left flank, we have my first unit of Cav and Apophis himself charging into the front of one of the units of Hernius' Rangers. This was definitely aggressive, but at the beginning, especially with how many changes there were in 2019, I'm really interested in gaining heuristic knowledge, or at least getting some results. And I don't mean results-based thinking. I mean, I need to be able to get some tactile feel, right? I can't just do math all day and go, well, this is, the optimum path. I would like to get some feel for it too. So I charge both of them into one of the ranger units, and then I send these guys into the other ranger units, and they're basically just blocking them up, especially as these ones here are hindered. I think these guys might also be hindered, because I think they clipped through the wood when they were charging, or this little piece of flat terrain, this whatever field. So yeah, so we've got some hindered charges, but Apophis himself, because he did not land in it and he's flying, is not hindered, which is good because he's only melee 4+. Yep, so in the combat here, we end up with these guys. They do nothing. They actually do pretty well. They do like 1 or 2, maybe 3 wounds to the Rangers, but these Rangers are a 14-16, although again, Apophis has Dread, so they're a 13-15. But I was not expecting much, and they did not deliver much, so it ended up okay. While right here, we end up pretty easily caving in these Rangers' heads, and it's mostly because Apophis, I think, hit and wounded with 10 of his 12 attacks. Keep in mind, he is elite, but he's only a 4+ melee, and he's just decided to be a beast here and kill him, which is great because Apophis gets to roll back a little bit. He rolls back 1 inch, I think, so these Rangers can't circumvent the unit in front of them and charge him. And these guys, the Revenant Cav to his right, just reform like this to block off the other Rangers from being able to charge him. Hernius could definitely just sort of spin around using individual and nonsense to get into him, but that's not a great fight, as he'll turn off my fly and then I'll murder him. So yeah, that's the idea. Over here, you can see the end of combat. It is as I described. The skeleton warriors that charged into Kragath, they end up doing 2 wounds to him, so they did something. But yeah, I wasn't expecting much. I did have one other charge that I forgot about, which is Alona decides to charge into these earth elementals. My idea was that Alona is pretty tough, but I've never fielded her, and I've never seen her fielded, so I just really wanted to get a feel for what she could accomplish, and I thought that if she went into the earth elementals, I mean, she has 8 attacks on 3s, and she's crushed 3, so 8 on 3s and 3s, and earth elementals themselves aren't exactly I don't think they can take her in 1 round. So that was the plan. Unfortunately, Bannock Colearm here, when he individual turns, he's just close enough to get a charge into Alona, which is bad news for her. I did not anticipate that. The Alona herself actually hit with all 8 of her attacks and wounded with 0 of them. So good job, Vampire. I'm all about you right now. I love you, boo. Moving forward to turn 2. Turn 2 dwarves. So yeah, off here on the left, we see that the Kragath does not take the bait and faces towards the skeletons to drop them off. His rangers do not move at all because they don't need to. Hernius actually ends up, I think, rolling over here somewhere. A little over here, so he can shoot into these Revenant Cav. The idea is that he's going to shoot bows into the Revenant Cav and then charge in with Kragath to get the finishing blow, which seems solid to me. Yeah, in the middle, the Earth Elementals get their counter charge, and Bannock Colearm goes into Alona. Thankfully, Alona does have a special rule called Love Eternal or something like that. Hold on, I actually have this written down. Yeah, Love Eternal. So individual or characters, period, are -1 to hit Alona in combat. So it's, you know, it's not exactly the... I'm not in real danger yet. I'm not full Ralph Wiggum yet. But, and finally off here on the right flank, you can see my opponent does something pretty canny, which is he moves his units forward a little bit, and his plan is to keep a battle line with these guys. Our Matt is messing it up a little bit. The plan is to keep a battle line with the Regiment of Iron Guard, or whatever they're called, and then the Bulwarker Horde. And then once he does this, if I charge in to either of these units, right, the other unit can then countercharge, right? If I charge both of them with 1-in-1 vampire, and even, you know, maybe 1-in-1 and a worm and some skeletons, right? It's not going to go super well because these bulwarkers are really difficult to take out. I think they're a 21-23 nerve, or maybe they're 22-24. They're def 6 because they've got big shield, and then they have phalanx. So I don't have any Thunderous, but he would turn it off. So it seems like a pretty good move. And Gallic's Fury decides to hold back a little bit, and these guys are angled just slightly, which is both good and bad, and we'll go over why it's bad later. But it's good right now because if the giant bug tries to charge into Gallic, he can't actually fit because these units are slightly bowed. So yep, that's the idea. Gallic himself going for some shoots onto vampires seems solid. Moving forward into combat, yeah, it looks like I did 2 wounds to them in combat. But Hernius' Rangers Part 2 charge into my Revenant Cav and do 1 or 2 wounds, but not enough to vaporize them. But it's not the same thing as over here. I think this unit had already taken like 5 or 6 wounds from shooting, and then Kragoth goes in there and does like 8 wounds. He just smears them across the ground and removes them. Finally, Alona. So Alona, the Earth Elementals don't do super well against her, nor does Bannock? Yeah, Bannock Colearm. So the Earth Elementals plus Bannock only do 6 wounds, but Bannock does have Brutal. So when my opponent picks up his dice, I'm like, well, you need a 9 twice, because I'm a -16. And he gets... he follows it up by rolling a hot 10 into an 11. So Alona's dead, turn 2. But that was some pretty spectacular dice. On the roll, if I'd realized Bannock could charge me, I wouldn't have done this as... just that Brutal alone, and the maybe 1 or 2 wounds that he throws in is too much. Because the Earth Elementals, they've got 18 attacks. They get on average 9 hits, but they only wound me on a 5, right? So they're only gonna sink 3-ish wounds on her. Bannock is D6 plus 6 attacks, and I think he's a 3+ with Crush 2. So on average, he's, you know, rocking like 9 or 10 attacks. We'll give him 9 for now, so that's 6, and then with the Crush 2, right, he's getting on that 4. So it's 3 plus 3, so my opponent got the average number of wounds, but then he gets Brutal, right? So he's got 7, but still, needing that 9 twice, I would take this, maybe. I probably don't want Bannock over here on this side of the field, but it wasn't a disaster. Like, this is a fine move. It just didn't pan out for me. And we see the end of turn 2 for the dwarves. We see the Dreadnought facing down the skeleton warriors again. Apophis refusing to go on his base, and all the bounce warfare over there. And turn 2 for Undead, as this list is very fast. Everything it's fast, and it, you know, I mean, it has 3 units of cav and 2 flyers, but those aren't really the fast element, or the weirdly fast, right? It's that I've got that Surge 13 from the Necromancer, who, oh, I actually forgot to mention, the Necromancer comes with Surge 8. I bought him Heal 3 and Bane Chant 2. So if I cast Bane Chant on skeletons, I'm Bane Chant 7. If I cast Heal, I'm Heal 8. And if I cast Surge, I'm Surge 13, which is big. Lastly, I gave him the Mirrodin's Amulet, so I can go do 2 in a game if I want. But yeah, so the Skeleton Warriors, I believe, could make this charge on their own. and they go for it. Actually, let's lock a picture back. They cannot make that charge on their own, so I must have searched it. But yeah, the vampires here, maybe they could make that charge. They must have been able to, because the vampires charged and... No, maybe they didn't. I don't know. The point is that they end up in combat. The vampire unit without the Brave Sharpness ends up in combat there too. While lastly, I have... Yeah, they definitely had that charge without it. So both the vampires and this skeleton warrior horde charge into the bulwarkers, and that should be enough, but that's some heavy math, right? I've got 25 attacks on twos and fours, and then a further 25 attacks on threes and fours, and then 30 or 25 attacks, I think, on fives and sixes. So it's okay dice, but I'm always worried about committing so hard like this. But this is a list of committing, so go for it. The Revenant King decides to block up these Iron Guard. I don't think they can kill me, and I don't think I can kill them. But I think I do have the advantage, as I can always leave if I want to. Even if he turns off my fly, I'm still speed 10. So I could always just run off. And since he has... he does not have any crushing on that unit, I know that, and I'm defense 5. Well, I've got that crush 3, so I'm going into him on 3s while he's going into me on 5s, so I think it's pretty good. And lastly, we have these skeleton warriors. Yep, they go into Bandit Colearm. How dare he kill Lona on her first journey? So yep, they go in there, and I think they actually had that charge on their own. Or maybe they were surged by the Necromancer. I'm not exactly... No, they were not, because I cast Bane Chant. I remember now. Ignore everything else. And off on the left, we see the Revenant Cav going back into Hernius's Rangers, Part 2. And then we have Apophis. Yeah, Apophis had a flank charge into these Rangers and was eager to lap that up. Goes right in. Also, if he kills them, he could get charged in by Kraggoth, so I will have to turn to face him, which makes this slightly less desirable, but shows off the power of Surge. And yeah, in this combat, I do another 2-ish wounds and get them, again, they're at 13-15 because Apophis is there. But yeah, with 4 wounds, that's not enough. I need a 9. Don't get it. I do heal a wound though, because I have Life Leech. Apophis, oh lord. So he's got 24 attacks here and he does 20 wounds. Just blows right through these guys. Apophis is just rolling out the box. I can't stop him. Too good. Nerf please. Ooh, and then nerf this picture. Yeah, these skeleton warriors go into Bandit Colearm. I do a couple wounds, but I do not believe I drop him right here and end up backing up a little bit. But, you know, you win some, you lose some. But in the big combat, thankfully, I actually forgot to mention, if we roll some pictures back, yeah, this die right here is from Gallic's Fury going into my vampires. He does 5 wounds to him, which means that normally it would be a boxcar to kill him. My opponent just picks up his dice and rolls them and gets the boxcar and goes, well, they're dead, except for my bug over here has the Banner of the Griffin. So thankfully, he could not get a roll to kill them. But yeah, it was funny. Yeah, the vampires plus the skeleton warriors, they don't easily kill out the bulwarkers. It is pretty nail-biting, but I do manage to drop them. I think I needed a 5 twice to get them, and I got it. My vampires heal 2 wounds due to Life Leech 2, which is pretty sexy. And I move the units back a little bit, which you'll see in a second. The bug combat here, yeah, I do 2 or 3 wounds here, so pretty good, but not enough to get a break. Or I do get a waiver because I roll very well on the dice. But these are dwarves, so they're headstrong, and I believe I actually wavered the Hernius's Rangers on the 9. Now that I remember, off there on the left. But again, 3+ headstrong does not make that a shirt. And at the end of the turn, yeah, you can see that the vampires and skeleton warriors have reformed. So the skeleton warriors are reforming to block off his terminators from getting into me, or his earth elementals, while these vampires have moved back 1 inch just to make these frontages not as good. And the vampires here are... they just backed off 1 as well. And my opponent did ask if, since the bug and these lovely ladies both ended up backing off 1 inch and he wanted to keep them exactly parallel, if it was possible, and I went no, because he actually didn't end up with it being exactly parallel. But now that I think about it, this mat is, you can see the curves, right? We might have just curved a unit out, because when we measure to do it, he's not parallel. So like my bug is like this, right? While the vampires are like this. So when he goes to line up, he will not quite be flush, and it won't work because he wants to take Golok and the Iron Guard in. It's just not possible. But yep, I did waver Bannock. You can see the die there, and I did waver these guys. I did not waver the Iron Guard, but I got 2 waivers there. Pretty good. And we move on to turn 3. So turn 3, yeah, that waver does nothing, and off on the left it does nothing as well. Kragoth going into my rear, yeah, I mean, I probably shouldn't have sent the warriors in here into Bannock. I don't know what I was thinking. That was just a bad move. Yep, he gets the rear there. I get front charged by Terminators and by Bannock. So, oof. But my Skeleton Warriors here are ready to support, although my opponent does make a rather good move, as there's a forest right here, right? So if he kills these guys and I go and he doesn't reform, because Apophis is right there and the Skeleton Warriors are right here, so it seems like he's going to get flanked no matter what he does. But if he doesn't reform, these guys are going into those trees and they get, you know, treble the attack, so they get 75 attacks, but they're only hitting on 6s. So, yep, pretty good maneuver for my opponent. And over here on the right, we see Golok's Fury decide to go into the wounded vampires, the ones with 3 wounds, while the Iron Guard go into my big bug, so into the Revenant King. In the combat here, yeah, I've taken 4 wounds. I think I go to 5 here because Hernius joins the fight, and the Rangers, I don't think they actually do that well. Oh, I've actually taken 3 wounds because I healed 1 due to Life Leech, but I don't think they do very well, but they roll really well on the break, and I believe they kill off this unit. So good news for the dwarves on the left. Yeah, this is gone. Kragoth here, I think he has 9 attacks, so he's got 27 in the rear, and he just blows through me. He does like 20 wounds, 21 wounds, there's some crazy amount into the skeletons, and we don't even have to roll the rest. He doesn't double one it, and these skeletons are gone. Over here though, yeah, I guess this is, I did 6 wounds. Yeah, I actually do very well with my bug. Against the bug, he swings in and does 0 or 1 or 0. But yeah, just nothing to the bug, which is funny for me, bad for dwarves. And Kragoth goes in. He has 29 attacks, I want to say. I'm sorry, not Kragoth, Golok. It has 29 attacks, does a further 11 wounds, right? So I've got 14 on me. I'm a dash 18, so he needs a 4. Gets a 10, and then right into double ones town. So that is real bad for the dwarves. And this is what the end of turn 3 dwarf looks like. You can see in the middle of the picture here, all these units are just very wary of Apophis, as apparently he is bloodthirsty today. So Kragoth turns to face him. The Terminators continue to keep Apophis in their front, and just letting these stupid skeletons charge them in the rear because they'll go right into this wood. So seems pretty good. Bannock decides to run forward right behind Kragoth just to scare off this necromancer, and the stone priest is just stoning around. Golok's Fury, this broke my heart when he got into those vampires. I mean, it was very good for me that he didn't kill them off, but looks like, oh, I just swapped him around. Yeah, that's just, I hate to see it happen, is what I'm saying. And we move on to vampires, or I'm sorry, not vampires, undead turn 3. It's not very complicated. I send the vampires with the Brew of Sharpness into the front of Golok. I send these vampires now with a flank charge into Golok's Fury, which is, I send the Worm back into the Iron Guard, and Apophis decides to charge into the Stone Priest. And this was a bit of a pain in the ass, just because of how charging individuals works. So you have to take the minimum distance, which means the minimum wheel, like how small of a wheel can you do to make it to them, right? But because this unit's here and this unit's here, right, it makes it so I have to sit here and measure this forever to get the exact angle to charge in. Then I charge in, he goes to face me, and then I center, right? So it's just a lot of steps. These guys obviously end up in the flank, and that is because I just crab walk them over here because I do not want to rear charge, and I walk my Necromancer back. He was slightly more than 5 inches from Bannock, and now he's slightly more than 10 inches from Bannock because in this little bit of wall that he just decided to hide in, but he's within 12 of the skeleton warriors. So yeah, gets that surge. And I pop Mirrodin's Amulet, so I cast Surge and I cast Bane Chant this turn. So these guys are Bane Chanted, much like their brothers before them, but and Apophis going in there, yeah. After combat, yeah, I forgot to take some unit pictures here, but yeah, Apophis and the Skeleton Warriors melt those guys. So Apophis, first off, hits with 10, I think, of his 12 attacks again, and does it 9-ish wounds to the priest, kills him off, then goes into the earth elementals and does like 9 or 10 wounds there. The warriors do a couple of wounds, we blow right through them. Apophis turns to face this way because Kragoth can't quite see him. That's a terrible line, but Kragoth can't quite see him, and he can't surge anymore now that his stone priest is gone. The skeleton warriors realize that Gallic's Fury is probably going to go down, and I think I rolled this combat first, which was a mistake, but Gallic's Fury is probably going down, so they face towards the fight that they need to be in. And yes, Gallic's Fury does in fact go down. It is a bad fight for him. Put him on double ones. You do not want to get vampires in the flank, especially when further vampires are in your front. So yep, kill off Gallic's Fury, and the bug fails to kill off these Iron Guard again, but I believe the Iron Guard are wavered this time. So there's that. You can see Hernius's Rangers over here. They are facing towards the table, and Hernius is somewhere off slightly to the left here. I'm not exactly sure. But we move on to turn 4 Dwarves. So turn 4 Dwarves, it's pretty simple due to a devastating turn 3. Kragoth just turns towards Apophis to make sure he's not getting flanked. His Bannock Colearm goes into my Skeleton Warriors, and I didn't think this was particularly worth it. I thought he should go into Apophis, but my opponent decides that he's going to shoot with Hernius and his Rangers into Apophis. So, you know, it's just a difference in opinion. But yeah, that's the idea. The Iron Guard either weren't wavered or more likely passed their Headstrong, since my opponent had passed all of the Headstrong up to this point. Goes into the Worm again. And yeah, this combat, Bannock does a couple wounds to me, but not enough to get a break. He actually does very well, I think, and does, you know, like six-ish wounds, and does pretty well there, but unfortunately doesn't get enough to get a roll, and then I have Iron Resolve, so I heal 1 back. And at the end of this combat, yeah, he does a couple wounds, but doesn't even waver the Worm, and in fact, I think rolls another double 1 or 3 or something here. Not that he needed something real big, so doesn't get it. Oh, nope, I am wrong. Completely other way. He does 4 wounds to me and boxcars it. So, yeah, gets the waiver there, which is pretty funny, again. But unfortunately, because he wavered me, when he rolls back, he's getting flank charged by vampires. Or maybe front charge. Either way, it's going to be bad for them, as they're already sitting on 6 or between 6 and 10 damage. So, oof. At the end of combat, yeah, you can see the skeletons took, I believe that means they took 7 damage, since I have Iron Resolve, or I forgot to resolve it, one or the other. And Apophis himself took 6 wounds from all the shooting, but was not wavered, or was not killed, since he can't be wavered. And we move on to Undead turn 4. So Apophis just is hungry and goes slightly off frame. He is fighting Hernius right next to his Rangers, which you'll see next. And we see Bannock Colearm get charged by more Skeleton Warriors. Hopefully these guys can avenge their brothers. And yes, this was in fact a flank charge from the Brew of Sharpness vampires. So that is 50 attacks on 2s and 4s. Oof, that is not good for dwarves. My giant worm, now that he has been boxcard, decides the better part of valor is backing the fuck away and goes 5 inches back. And here we see Hernius and Apophis fighting. So my opponent, right before I roll dice for this, goes, yeah, you know, those other guys were weak, right? But Hernius is a real dwarf. Hernius will take you to fucking work, right? And then Apophis proceeds to hit him with all 12 and wound him with all 12 attacks. So do not taunt Apophis. He will mess your day. I roll right through Hernius and then decide to face towards his rangers. I heal 1 wound due to life leech. And yep, the skeleton bros decide to finally get rid of Bandit Colearm. He's killed my vampire lord. He has killed another horde of skeleton warriors and been a general pest. So we get rid of him lickety split. Well, turn 4 split, I guess. And yeah, this combat, I'm sitting on 12 wounds and I do like 14, 15 wounds to these guys, which is pretty bad, but they're already sitting on 9 wounds. So yep, roll right through them and heal 2. And here is the end of turn 4. Pretty ugly for my opponent. He's got Kragath left to stare down some skeletons, and he has Hernius' Rangers to charge Apophis, and that's about it. So turn 5. Turn 5 sees those 2 things happen. Hernius' Rangers decide to try to avenge Hernius and apparently the rest of the fucking army from Apophis' fury. And we have the Kragath going into the skeleton warriors hoping to get a second kill. It looks like this corn dog always represents Bane Chant, so when you see it out, and it looks like I had Bane Chanted him to fight Bannock before. Yep, he goes into me and does 0, does nothing to Apophis, just ugly. They are sitting on 4 wounds from their protracted combat with the Revenant or Revenant Cav. Over here, Kragath, he does a couple wounds to the skeleton warriors, but not enough to actually kill them off, so they are here to stay. And here is the end of Dwarf turn 4. No units killed and no units wavered because Undead. So, Undead turn 4. Yeah, I just take these warriors and back them away, or spin them away from Kragath. It looks like I actually did back them away. I'm not sure what... Hold on. Ooh, did I? Yes, I did back them away, which is, but then I cheated because I adjusted their frontage. It's not quite all that relevant because I could just back them away 2.5 inches and it's the exact same, but it looks like I cheated a little bit. So sorry to my opponent. But I decide to just, this is Kragath's flank here, and the vampires were in it, so I just moved them around, and I needed the skeletons to back off so I could see them, not so I could charge them with my 1 pivot, but I could not see them. So the skeletons back, or no, other way. Yeah, obviously I could see them, they're height 4. Yeah, I needed the skeletons to back off so I could fit there. And they get in there in the flank. That's bad news bears for Kragath. And Apophis, he's sitting on 10 wounds. Oh, looks like he did hurt me. I misspoke before, but not enough to kill me. And I'm about to wreck house on a, what is that? He's killed Hernius, or Hernius' Rangers. He killed off, yeah, a Stone Priest. He killed off Elementals, and now he's going to kill off another unit of Hernius' Rangers. So Apophis kill count too high. And in these combats, the vampires in the flank do what vampires in the flank do and wreck this Earth Elemental, Greater Earth Elemental named Kragath. He is gone. And Apophis does a few wounds. He doesn't do quite as well. I think he only does like 7 or 8 wounds here instead of his normal 10. But that's enough, and he kills off the last remaining dwarf, which means that at the end of the game, it's a complete tabling. There are no dwarves left, and the undead reign supreme over this lifeless 2D world. But yeah, as for comments on the game, I think my opponent played very well, especially as he's pretty new to Kings of War. He's only been playing for a couple months, and really that just means like a couple games over here, because we only get at most 1 game a month, or 1 game a week. So yeah, my opponent played very well for that, and he's been out of wargaming for about 8 years, so I'm happy to see him back, and I think this was a fun game, if not a particularly close one. Unfortunately, these vampires not getting killed off by Gallic's Fury was very, very, very unfortunate for my opponent, and sort of I mean, it wouldn't have mattered that much in this case, but I really think that the double 1 rule needs to be looked at again, because a lot of people say that it's pretty much the, you know, if you're gonna have double 1s, then it's the same as double 6s, but it's really not, because a double 6, if your opponent, or if I roll double 6 against you, your opponent gets a full turn to react, right? So the victim of a double six gets a full turn to back away the unit, to charge you with a different unit, to shoot whatever double sixed them, right? Well, a double one, the victim of that unit is the person that inflicted the roll, which means the next turn is their opponent's, meaning if I double one, I'm just fucked. I just sit there and take whatever you have, right? So it's just really unfortunate. I think that the rule needs to be amended to state that if you double one against a unit, they cannot charge, right? They cannot charge, they cannot shoot, maybe even they cannot act. I would love that. It wouldn't save it here, but in general, that would be a big difference. So, sorry for that small tirade. I hope you guys enjoyed the game, and I'll see you next time. Bye!